Welcome to Kitchen Conversation with Lisa and Sterling, and we have a series talking about new technology. And today, Lisa, we're going to be talking about how does new technology impact upon compliance, and especially regulatory compliance? How is this tool going to change the way we're being regulated? Any thoughts?
Well, I mean, just take it back to the beginning of my career, for example, in the 80s. I mean, that just sort of shows how old I am. But, we used to go into work, and in my office, there was a whole bank of files along one wall. And that was the only records that we had in the council for all the different local businesses. And I remember you go, it was all A to Z. Somebody's job was to actually put those files into alphabetical order. And you'd be told to go out and do so many inspections. And then on the morning, you'd go and grab the files, and your heart would sink when you pulled out this great big fat file because you knew you were going to go to a really grotty premises. And then you think, well, that's okay. The next one's a really thin file, so maybe that'll be quite good. And you take this pile of documents with you in the car to go and do your inspections, and then write by hand on the file. So all the notes were handwritten. And then maybe you dictate a letter, and somebody would type that up, and then it would be, you'd come back to you, and then you'd make amendments because it was wrongly typed or whatever, and go back again, and eventually that letter would go out maybe a week later, and the local business would get this letter, and it would tell them what they needed to do and so on. And think how far we've gone from that in terms, that paper system to then having a digital system now. And then you wonder, well, where else is it going to go afterwards? So now, when I was running hygiene audit systems, we had audits on tablets. We would be doing them, and then that meant that the business could have a report straight away, no paper involved. You just type it straight into the tablet. And I wonder what the next step is likely to be. I would imagine maybe some self-assessments by businesses feeding back into the local authority.
Do you think artificial intelligence will play a part here? Because now everything is digitalized. You could actually use AI to actually gather all the information about a premises from all areas of the council or on news or on, and then the actual AI could direct you to which are the appropriate premises to visit. And then in my mind, I wonder if visits are going to be the future. Are there going to be other ways that we can assess safety in a factory or in a catering operation without actually going in there? Because I always thought with inspections, when I started off as a regulator, you're only seeing a premises in a particular period of time, and it might be absolutely brilliant in the half hour you're there, but that doesn't mean next week is going to be terrible.
No.
And so just gives you that snapshot. And I think real-time analysis, will inform regulators of what's going on in a premises, especially high-risk premises. You can imagine all that digital data that their online sensors are creating in that environment could be fed to a regulator and shared with a regulator to make sure that there was actual compliance.
Well, there's so many potential possibilities. From using CCTV cameras, perhaps behind a bar to measure what people are doing, to measure what the staff are doing, whether they're washing their hands at the right time in the kitchen. There are lots of things that could be done. Obviously, this could infringe on personal liberties and all the rest of it. But so many times when there's a food poisoning outbreak, it's not because they haven't got the paperwork right. It's because human error or humans have decided to circumvent the system. So, for example, where they've decided to get ahead of themselves, they've cooked food in advance, cooled it in the wrong way, not reheated it properly, and caused a food poisoning outbreak as a result of that. So it's human error. Sometimes it's mistake. Sometimes it's almost willful non-compliance with the system that they've got. And maybe there's some ways that this can be picked up so that we can actually help to prevent food poisoning as well as just regulate and make sure that we get people if they've done something wrong. But it would be great, wouldn't it, if there were algorithms that could look at the data coming in from the activity that people are doing, like somebody's not washing their hands enough, for example, or someone's touching raw chicken and then they're not washing their hands. I mean, the sky's the limit when you start to get really creative, and it could be really exciting.
I think for me is the exciting thing about digitalization and regulation is the consumer going to become the regulator? So it's great that we have FHRS, isn't it? If you go to a restaurant, I always have a look out for it. It's a marvelous system. But I wonder how many of us wait till we get to the restaurant to do that. I wonder actually, because a lot of us are going online. Certainly, I'm using TripAdvisor. And when you've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments on a particular place, then it either gives you a confidence that, it's a great place to go to, or it's a bad place because people say, the food tasted off. I was ill the next day. And in fact, almost now you can become your own regulator by using that technology to actually assess a premises before you even walk across the threshold.
Absolutely. I mean, not just TripAdvisor, but there may be other more subtle ways of gathering data. For example, many regulators now look at Twitter and Facebook to see what's going on in their locality. And of course, if there's a sudden surge of people saying that, I know Public Health England, for example, will look at people reporting vomiting on Twitter. So, they can gather that information and they know that there's a problem potentially from norovirus. So harvesting data from all these different sources could be for the common good, as well as we always feel that we don't want Big Brother looking at us and we don't want an invasion of our privacy. But there may be some things that would be to the good of the public health.
So that's an interesting view on what compliance and regulation might look at the future. So thank you, Lisa. So it is goodbye from me.
And goodbye from him.